Don't mind the rain or the rolling sea. The weary night never worries me. But the hardest time in a sailor's day is to watch the sun as it dies away. Oh, once my heart was wild and free, like a flashing spar on the open sea. But now that spar has washed ashore and come to rest at my true love's door. Oh Lord, if dreams were only real, I'd feel my hands on that wooden wheel. With all my heart I'd turn around and tell the boys we're homeward bound. I'll dance on down and walk ashore and sail the gray funnel line no more.
Hello and welcome to the Bad Spot and part 4 of The Last Star Marked, my brand new Sundered Isles campaign, although I'm starting to feel like it's not brand new anymore and should probably stop saying that. Anyway, at the top of the episode you will have heard an excerpt from the sea shanty The Grey Funnel Line, read beautifully by the wonderful Vin Vox. Vin is a voice actor from the southeastern United States with credits in animation, interactive media, podcasts and more, and I really do urge you to check out their stuff, to which you'll find a link in the description below. And whilst I have your attention, why don't you leave a like, subscribe and click the little bell icon so you can follow along with the campaign each and every week. These things are really important for supporting the channel and supporting what I do, and if you really want to support the channel, then why not check out the Bad Spot Patreon. There you'll get early access to all episodes, exclusive behind the scenes content, and your name spelled correctly on screen, like these lovely people. Last time out, Gideon was forcibly inducted into the Ebb Tide by Governess McCabe, joining a clandestine network of spies and saboteurs. Realising it's join or be executed, he has little choice to accept, and swears an iron vow to the governess to track Felicity Devereaux, who appears to have left Port Emberlyn, stowed away on a merchant vessel. Gideon and Lorenzo head to the docks to investigate and find the ship that she most likely left on, the Mistress of the Isles, is docked and ready to make another short run to Crown Falls on New Harlock's North Island. Once aboard, Gideon scopes things out, discovering that the Mistress of the Isles is used by smugglers who use longboats to slip away in the night with their illicit cargo mid-journey, evading the authorities as they head to the settlement of Fool's Rest. Gideon learns that Felicity took the smuggler's boat the previous evening, so negotiates passage to Fool's Rest. Once aboard, however, one of the smugglers marks him with a glowing handprint that can only be seen by the light of the moon. Before we kind of get into it, should we do a little check on our progress before we do? Although, actually, before we do that, I must hold my hands up and say that I got a couple of things wrong last time out. And you can all stop looking so surprised that I should get a rule wrong. But I regret to inform you that sadly I have. A couple of people in the comments pointed out last time that I wasn't marking progress correctly, and they were all correct. What I said were the ranks, what I showed on the graphics, and what I was thinking in my head were all very different. Like, I had imagined the governess as a formidable connection and had been marking progress on her one box at a time, but I was saying she was dangerous, and on the graphic it also said she was dangerous. And likewise, the vow to find Felicity, I said, was epic, but in my head I meant extreme, and I was marking it as it was extreme, like 2 ticks at a time, but I had it on the graphic as epic. So what I've done is I've corrected this firstly and updated the graphics. So this is what they look like now. They are much clearer to follow for you, and more importantly, they make it much easier for an idiot like me to remember what the fucking ranks are. You know, you'd think that having played this game almost weekly for 3 years that I would know this by now, but there you go. So in terms of actual progress, I don't think we have anything extra on the vow to track Felicity, but does anything count? Does anything like what we did last time count towards our background vow? And I think we do have something. I'm going to say that that little flashback that we saw during the interlude, where Gideon was seen with a lover possibly, or at least someone who had seen his tattoo anyway, someone who is maybe tied to a secret he has, which might have something to do with a scar on his side. I think that that's going to count. It bends the rules slightly because really those are things that the audience has learned rather than Gideon. But sharp, I'm going to take it anyway. So we are up to half a box of progress on our background bow. So with that bookkeeping out of the way, let's begin. So we know two things for sure right now. Gideon is heading to Fool's Rest. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that he has been marked by one of the smugglers. Now, why they did this and to what end, who knows? And Gideon has no idea what's going on. He has no idea what's happening. As far as he knows, he has just convinced them to give him safe passage to Fool's Rest. And he's just going to have to think of a way out of compensating them when they arrive. It's not what I would call the best laid plan. But, I mean, you've all met Gideon, right? He's not really a best laid plans kind of guy. So this could very well be about to blow up in his face. Now, the reason that we are in this mess, and when I say mess is because, you know, there's a lot of negative things going in Gideon's, like being thrown Gideon's way right now. It's because we rolled a miss on the move set a course, which says, on a miss, you are waylaid by a significant threat and must pay the price. If you overcome this obstacle, you may push on safely to your destination. Now, I said last episode that I didn't want to get kind of like waylaid en route. I just wanted bad stuff to happen to him once he got there, but I did want him to get there and actually explore the place a little first. So Gideon is oblivious, and he kind of will remain so past the point at which he arrives. And like I said, once he gets there and experiences a little bit, we'll get to the bad stuff. The smugglers have marked him, and they clearly have marked him for someone else to be able to pick him out for some nefarious reason. But we'll figure out what that is and what those people want as we go. But first, I want to establish some details about Fool's Rest, because there are a ton of new settlement oracles in the Sundered Isles, and there are quite a few details that I'd like to roll up. There are quite a few details also that we know already. So we know, for example, that it is a waterside settlement. And in terms of population, looking at the options we have on the oracle, I think that it makes sense for it to be populated by hundreds of people. Now, in terms of its overall aesthetic, the one that's jumping out at me from the oracle is ramshackle. And then I think what I'll do is I will roll up another detail to kind of combine with ramshackle and see what we get. So, 19. 19 is dismal. Ramshackle and dismal. It sounds delightful, frankly. One thing that we need to kind of reckon with here is that I rolled the name of Fool's Rest using the cursed oracle for settlement names. But I've been thinking, do I want the settlement to be cursed? Like, do I want the place to be supernaturally cursed? Or is this just a really bad place? Because there is a big difference. And in the weeks between these episodes, I have decided that I'd like to take a mix and match approach, because there are a bunch of oracles that we are going to roll on. And I've decided that where an oracle suggests rolling twice, I'm going to roll once on the regular oracle and then once on the cursed one. And hopefully we'll come out with something kind of interesting. So one of those oracles is the first look oracle, which will determine how this place appears to us when we arrive. So let's go with the regular oracle first. 35 is conspicuous guard posts and patrols. Okay. And now the cursed one. 71. Shrouded by a clinging, persistent fog. Okay, that is an interesting combination. Okay, let's roll and see who is in control of this place. 56 is unknown faction. Well, in terms of factions, we have the Ebb Tide, we have the League of Smoke and Steel, and we have the Circle of Silent Hands. They're the only factions that we've established so far, and I don't feel like it's necessary for them to have a presence here, kind of shoehorning them in here. So I think a hitherto unknown faction works quite nicely here. So next, what is the disposition of people here? 34 is unwelcoming. Okay, and what sort of authority is here? 44 is lawless. So it's lawless, but there are conspicuous guard posts and patrols, which is an interesting combination, I think. Okay, what about the settlement focus? I think it makes sense to just pick here because smuggling is right there on the list. This is a lawless kind of black market settlement where fences and smugglers will openly move illicit goods. You can buy and sell practically anything. But I think if we're just going to pick a settlement focus, why don't we roll on the curse settlement focus oracle, just for a little bit of flavour. 29 says, corrupted or sickened by the effects of a cursed location or relic. So that's interesting. That is really, really interesting. We've got this hive of scum and villainy, this notorious outpost for smugglers and cutthroats, but it is stricken due to the presence of a cursed relic. And I wonder if someone has brought a cursed relic into town and it has had this corrupting effect on the place and the people. I think that as a place where things are bought and sold and brought in all the time, I think that's actually a very intriguing narrative possibility. And in terms of that faction controlling this place, I think I might not want to get into that. I think it's not really that important. There is a smugglers faction listed in the oracles, but I don't really think it's that essential to define this faction too much. What is important is that there is no known faction here, and the people who are quote unquote in charge of this place are smugglers, but they are smugglers who have been corrupted or changed or driven mad by the influence of this cursed relic. And that's what the patrols and the guard posts are for, I guess. They're maybe guarding against anyone coming in to get the relic, I think, maybe. I don't know. Maybe we'll get to that. Fool's Rest is a bad place, right? Anyway, just every other day of the year is bad. But the arrival of this relic has changed things. And I really like the idea that this has happened like really recently, like in a matter of like weeks maybe. And what was already a terrible place to be, a dangerous place to be, is now starting to unravel and starting to lose its mind. And now this is a very, very unpleasant place to be. I think this is a really interesting kind of time and place for Gideon to stumble into. We do have some more really great settlement oracles to roll on that will really help flesh this place out further. But what we'll do is we'll get into those once we actually start exploring. But for now, let's envision our arrival. Gideon and the others have been rowing for hours, and they have set their pace to the rhythmic snoring of the big smuggler who is asleep at the back of the boat. And I think everyone on the boat knows that they've arrived all at once because something just kind of changes, right? Gideon looks at Lorenzo, who has been sort of perched on the gunwale, like looking out nervously. And Lorenzo shivers and hops onto Gideon's lap, curls up into a ball as a bone-chilling cold envelops the boat, along with this thick, heavy mist that smells and tastes like dank mold. Now, the smuggler at the front of the boat, she fires up her like smuggler's lantern and holds it out. And the light that it gives off doesn't cut through far at all. And she's just watching. And in hushed, cautious tones, she says, "Keep rowing. We're close." And they slowly push through the fog. Gideon notices how on edge the little smuggler seems, and every part of him knows that something isn't right here. Like, you get an instinct for when things are off, and those senses are tingling right now. And he's not the only one. Like, he can see that everyone on the boat is feeling it. This slow, deliberate pace carries on for a few minutes before the little smuggler motions for them to stop, and she sees something in the gloom. And Gideon strains to see it and can't see anything. And they drift silently, everyone's eyes nervously scanning the bank of mist for a sign. And then they all see it. This pale orange glow in the distance. And the smuggler up front aims her lamp towards it and motions for everyone to row. And within a few strokes, the prow of the boat comes bumping up against a rotting, partially collapsed wooden dock. And the smuggler says, "What are you waiting for? Welcome committee. Off you get." And the passengers disembark, along with all their belongings, and they step off onto the dock, this wet, slippery dock with wooden rotted boards beneath their feet, creaking and moaning. And it's at this point that Gideon remembers that he has to lie his way out of paying the smugglers, because he said to them on the Mistress of the Isles that they would be richly rewarded should they grant him safe passage. And now he's here, he's going to have to do something about that. And he turns to kind of fire up the excuse he's going to give them and try and talk his way out of it. But before he's even half thought of the lie he's going to tell, the longboat and the smugglers are gone, and out in the mist he can just hear frantic rowing fading away into the distance. Like, something is definitely up here. Something is definitely not right. Can't place what it is. This place is spooky, this place is weird, but why would the smugglers leave without being compensated? That is what kind of tips Gideon off that something is really, really wrong. The other passengers all seem to know where they're going and head along the dock, even though they are kind of fighting their way through this unnaturally stubborn mist. They've all got people to meet and goods to move, so they kind of determined to kind of get where they're going, just kind of head off. And they move up the dock, and Gideon has no real choice but to follow. He doesn't know this place, so he may as well do as Romans do, I guess. And he kind of looks back over his shoulder as he hurries up this set of kind of very rickety stairs. And through this slight relent in the mist, he can see the outline of what appears to be a large tower, and it is built onto the dock. Like, if built is the right word, but like maybe cobbled together is more accurately. It's kind of built in these kind of jutting out bits of mismatched scrap, like wood and metal, and it looks like precarious, crooked, and totally unsafe. And there's this oar sticking out about halfway up, and dangling off the end of this oar is a brazier with these, and it kind of swings in what little breeze there is, with these orange flames flickering away inside. There's no lighthouse here, and it probably suggests that this thick mist is a relatively new development, and they have had to construct this kind of lighthouse type thing here, so people know when they're going to bump into the dock, I guess. But what's strange about this is that it's not just there to guide sailors in. There is also at the top of the tower, and Gideon can just make this out, two figures, people keeping watch. Like, what they are watching over, or what they can even see in this mist, who can say? But there appears to be a watchtower that's been hastily constructed in the middle of this rickety dock. And Gideon hasn't really got much time to process this, because the passengers who have all disembarked are moving through the mist and towards a certain place. I think that place has got to be like a bar, or like a tavern, sorry, like a bar, like a cocktail bar. Normally, like, the first port of call in Fool's Rest is this place, this tavern. And I think as we've moved a little bit through this place, it's time to roll up a couple more details about the settlement to work into the narrative as we walk around a little bit. So I'm going to dive straight into the cursed oracle for this, because like, we sense that something's wrong, and I'm also going to do it twice just for the hell of it. So what cursed settlement details have we got for Fool's Rest? 96, the sun doesn't rise as it should with the dawn. And 51, protective glyphs are carved upon outer walls or boundary stones. Yeah, they work. But should we roll on the regular oracle, the boring old regular oracle for balance? I think we probably should. Why not? We can always ignore the result if we don't like it. 37. A masked vigilante has taken matters into their own hands. Well, I'm absolutely not ignoring that. A masked vigilante has taken matters into their own hands. What matters and why? Well, this has suddenly got very, very interesting. I may have to marinate on that for a while. Okay, anyway, so I think those other two things are much more immediate. They're like more noticeable visual things. And that makes me wonder, like, have I rolled on the right oracles there? Because the first two seem like visual details, and the second one seems very much like something we would roll on the old Starforged settlement trouble oracle. So, yeah, I wonder if that's correct. No, that was the right oracle. So that's definitely happening. If I can figure out a way to work a vigilante into the narrative, that's happening. So, on this short walk from the docks to the tavern, I think that first Lorenzo and then Gideon notices these glyphs. And they stand out because they have been freshly done, right? They've been carved into the wood. The kind of bollards that lead up the way out of the dock, and maybe into kind of doors and so on and so forth. And they are kind of like freshly splintered. And they're all very basic, kind of triangular or circular symbols. And some of them seem very scrappily done that at first glance you might mistake them for just, damaged wood or whatever. But actually taking a minute to pause and look at them, Gideon can see that, these have been deliberately done, and he doesn't know what they mean, but he knows that, like, glyphs are rarely good, especially when they've been carved with such inaccuracy and in what some look like in a bit of a frenzy. And in addition to that, like, Gideon's fairly certain it should be at least dawn by now. Like, they were sailing on the Mistress of the Isles for several hours and departed from that on the longboat and rowed for several more hours. Like, the sun definitely should have come up by now, but for some reason this place is just mired in this perpetual gloom. And not wanting to dwell too much on that, he follows the others into the tavern. And the vibes in this place are terrible, right? It is run down, the way that everything here is, but it looks just uncomfortable. The fire in the hearth is barely crackling, barely giving off any warmth at all. And the patrons all sit on mismatched furniture that all looks uncomfortable, like it's all seen better days. They drink out of these rusty pewter tankards, and everyone just looks miserable. Like, even for a hive of scum and villainy, this place is depressing. And the new arrivals, they all shuffle in, and the other passengers quickly find who they are looking for, or who they've arranged to meet, and they all kind of pair off for these secret meetings, which just leaves Gideon and Lorenzo, who are stood in the entrance, the eyes of the entire tavern upon them. So here we are. We are in the worst dive bar in a cursed town. And Gideon is very obviously now clearly an outsider. I'd say there are a few dozen people in this tavern. It's busy, but the atmosphere is so frosty that it feels empty. It's not really the hopping social scene that Gideon usually enjoys, but like, we've got a vow to fulfill. Like, we need some answers. We need to try and figure out, like, where Felicity has gone, if she even came through here. We need some kind of lead as to her whereabouts. We know she came here on the smuggler's boat, but those two have just disappeared. They've just turned and rowed off, so we can't ask them. And this place is rough, right? Everyone in here looks like they could and would skin Gideon alive. He's also been marked out with the sign of a hand on his back, but because the moonlight isn't showing in here, like, he can probably get away with that. And he's quickly, like, sizing up this situation. He realizes that this is the kind of place where you're never more than a heartbeat away from imminent danger. But this is also a social situation, and he enjoys those. I dare say he thrives in those. So he is going to use one of his best strengths here. He is going to deploy some weapons grade bullshit. So what Gideon is going to try and do, sensing that the odds are not particularly in his favour, he is going to avoid going from table to table asking people for information or trying to pull them to one side and trying to kind of prise details out of them one by one. What he's going to do is something altogether more bold. He walks over to the bar and he picks up a tankard and he bangs it down 3 times to get everyone's attention. And it does. And he says, "Now I have your ears. I will be brief. The woman I seek came through this place yesterday, and she is either being harboured by one of you or has left already. For your sakes, it had better be the latter." And he's kind of searching the room for a reaction, but there isn't one. "She stands shorter than I, flame-haired with a temperament to match. I pity anyone who gets close enough to see her arm, with which she could end even the meanest of you in a heartbeat. The bounty on her head is so large it will see me into my elder years, meaning I will never have to consort with the likes of you in places like this ever again, which suits me just fine. Anyone wishing to share in that bounty and save me the bother of having to ask you all less politely, I'll be seated here for the next 10 minutes. I recommend you do not waste my time." And this is a move. And that move could be face danger. But I think it's actually gather information. Gather information says when you search for clues, conduct an investigation, analyse evidence, or do research, roll plus wits. And once again, he is lying through his teeth here. He is trying to convince the patrons of this tavern that he is in actual fact a hardened bounty hunter on the trail of a very dangerous woman. So we will be utilising our scoundrel asset once again, which says when you make a move by lying, bluffing, stealing, or cheating, add +2. Right, let's see if anyone buys this shit. Let's gather information, rolling plus wits. That is a weak hit. On a weak hit, the information provides new insight, but also complicates your quest. Envision what you discover, then take +1 momentum. So, firstly, we will bump our momentum up to 5. Right, they do buy it to a degree. So, I think someone will come and talk to Gideon. They will come forward with some information regarding Felicity. But I think this information is not going to be the most ideal news. And I've kind of been thinking about this place, and I've been thinking about Fool's Rest, this little settlement, and ways out of here, but also how that interacts with the idea that it's been cursed by some mysterious relic. Now, Felicity came here on the smuggler's boat, and I think it's because she had to. I think that she was actually going to Crown Falls, but she thought that the authorities would have picked her up coming off the first boat out of Port Emberlyn. I think that had she made her original rendezvous, she would have been in the clear, she would have been able to make a clean getaway, but she didn't because of Gideon's intervention. So she had to flee on the Mistress of the Isles and ended up having to sneak off on the smuggler's boat. She had to take this calculated risk. And when she arrived here, she had to figure out a way to get to Crown Falls. And I've been thinking that the smugglers who come here have to move their goods, right? And I think that there is an overland route between Falls Rest and Crown Falls, and that is what smugglers use. Now, we'll get into this in a later episode, I'm sure, but I have been sort of imagining Crown Falls as quite an authoritarian place. It's a place where you can't just waltz in with loads of illicit goods. And as a result, smugglers who have goods to move from Falls Rest have to go overland. They have to go this way. And that's the route that Felicity took. And if Gideon wants to find her, he will probably have to take this as well. But there's a problem. I think that the people that are in charge of this place, or maybe the people who have taken control of this place, also known as the people who are in possession of a certain cursed relic, have made this route inaccessible. And now I've just said all this, what if it wasn't overland at all? What if it was a network of caves and man-made tunnels that links the two settlements of Falls Rest and Crown Falls? And I think that the people who are in control of the relic, the people who have cursed this place, essentially, have taken control of the tunnel network, and as a result, the only way out of here. I think that works. I think that works quite nicely. So Gideon needs to find this out. He sits at the bar waiting for someone to come up and talk to him. And all the while, he's kind of quietly, internally bugging out, because if no one does come and speak to him, he's going to be pretty hung out to dry, and it'll be really obvious that he's not actually a bounty hunter, because he's not going to start roughing people up. But after about 5 minutes, someone does come and speak to him. And I think it's the barkeep, who is an elderly man with saggy, pale, liver-spotted skin and these kind of wisps of white hair that are desperately clinging to his scalp. This guy has probably been pouring drinks here since the place first opened, so I imagined he's seen some stuff, and he pours Gideon a drink, a short pour of this dark, syrupy, very strong-smelling rum. And he says, "You will not get much out of anyone here, no matter what the reward. But she came through here all right, this woman you speak of. She did not linger, and she was wise not to. She had one drink, found someone willing to guide her through the warren, and that's all there is to say about that." And the warren is what I'm going to call this cave network. It seems kind of appropriate. And then the barkeep leans in conspiratorially and says, "A word to the wise, if I may. The warren has recently become inaccessible. She will not have gotten far, if anywhere at all. If you had any sense, you'd get yourself across the gap and be gone from this place. Swim if you have to." And the gap is what I'm calling this little gap between the islands. So we have a lead. Felicity has come through this place. She has hired a guide, and she has headed into the warren. And I think that counts as progress. Let's have a look at the move, reach a milestone. And I think this definitely counts as gaining valuable insight. So let's mark progress on this extreme, not epic vow, which we will do so 2 ticks at a time. So we are up to 1.5 out of 10. Right, we are really flying through this vow. I will absolutely not regret making this extreme. So Gideon nods to the barkeep, thanking him, and not wanting to make a show of it, knocks back the drink that was poured for him. And sadly, it's not the finest cask-aged rum, but pretty much pure alcohol with maybe some molasses mixed in, and he can feel it starting to kind of strip the lining of his throat. And again, he doesn't want to break his cover as this tough guy bounty hunter, so he does everything in him to kind of retain his calm, gets up and leaves with Lorenzo in tow. As soon as he steps outside, he immediately doubles over and retches the drink back up again, much to Lorenzo's amusement. And as he doubles over, there is this briefest break in the mist, this perpetual fog that surrounds this place. And the warm morning sun just about breaks through from above. And as it does, the handprint on Gideon's back shines more brightly than it ever did in the moonlight. And Lorenzo sees this, and his little face drops. The mist draws in again, and darkness descends as someone or something approaches. So Lorenzo is trying to get Gideon's attention, but that rum, if you can even call it rum, has had quite the effect. In fact, it's done a real number on him. Gideon has perhaps a more refined, sophisticated palate when it comes to drinks, and this one has done him a mischief. He feels like he has just swallowed a cup of hot gravel. But that's not his biggest problem. That's not his biggest concern. The thing that Lorenzo is trying to alert him to is a much more pressing issue. The mark on his back has shone for the first time since they arrived here, and we are about to find out who is being drawn to it. And I think I've vaguely figured something out. I think that the way this works is the smugglers would mark someone coming into Fool's Rest in this way with the handprint on the back. If they think they're an easy mark, right? If they think they are out of place, someone who would not normally frequent such a dangerous place. A foolish merchant, perhaps, or, a young criminal who has got ideas above their station. Someone who could be easily mugged or extorted or robbed or killed. Everything on them stolen, body dumped into the sea. Maybe the smugglers would get a cut out of whatever's been taken. That's just good business, right? But what if the people doing the mugging are the same people who have the relic? And since this place has fallen under control of these folks, the smugglers have had to pay a cost of being able to come and go freely. And that cost is now not monetary. That cost is flesh and blood, because the people here, the people who have the relic, the people who are in charge, are no longer interested in riches. It's much worse than that. So how many of them? I think 3 is a good number, the magic number, if you will. We are paying off the result of a miss. Remember, this needs to be sufficiently bad. It can't just be a mild inconvenience. And obviously these people are cursed. They've been affected by whatever this relic's power is. And I actually wonder whether they're just doing this kind of mugging, like finding the person who's been marked, almost as if by rote, almost as if they don't actually have any sense of what they're actually doing. They've been driven to this. They've been driven to this state by the power of this relic. So they've kind of almost lost any sense of who they are and what they do. They're just kind of going through the motions, almost like kind of zombies. Just they don't know what's happening to them. They're just doing it. They don't realize how or why they've changed. I think that's actually kind of cool. But I think we need to figure out a little more what that looks like. We can't just have zombie people. There are a couple of oracles for this. In the character oracles, we have a cursed first look. We can give that a roll. 9 is abyssal, which is fairly open to interpretation. I also think there is a cursed character detail oracle, so we can roll on that and see what else that throws up. 25 is drowned. I think that combination actually tells me what the relic is. And if you cast your minds back to session 0, I'm sure you all remember that very clearly. We said that the Sundered Isles has a great lost civilization, right? And they are absolutely not, the Atlanteans with the serial numbers filed off. But yeah, we said that there was a great civilization. They were lost to the sea, and they were known as the Terion. And they'd been consumed by the ocean, and as a result, they were now kind of referred to colloquially as the Sunken. So I think the relic, it makes sense that is a cursed sunken artifact, and it's having this dreadful impact on those who come into contact with it. And Gideon is about to face off against 3 of these people. And I think Lorenzo is like pulling at Gideon's sleeve to get him to turn around and actually see what's incoming. And when he finally does, he actually doesn't see anything. He hears it. In amongst the murk that envelops this place, Gideon hears these slow, lurching footsteps, wet footsteps slapping on the wood of the dock, and also this sound of like constantly dripping water. And at first, Gideon just assumes that someone has had too much of that grog that they serve in the tavern, stumbled out and kind of fallen in the dock. Like, it must happen. It's a hazard of having such a close waterside location, he supposes. And he doesn't want to hang around and find out. So he moves along the dock, away from the tavern and like towards where the tower is. But these footsteps follow slowly. And now they also appear to be ahead of him. And he's kind of struggling to make out where these sounds are coming from. There's this disorientating effect of the mist, probably also the rum as well, and just the general cursed vibe of this. But he is kind of spinning out. It's all playing on his nerves. He kind of doesn't know where he's going, what's around him. He feels very unsafe. And he hears the footsteps. They keep coming, and the dripping sound gets louder and louder. And up ahead he sees an alley. And he thinks maybe if he ducks down there, gets out of sight, he'll be safe. And Lorenzo scurries along and kind of clambers up onto his shoulder as Gideon slinks into the shadows. And from here, he kind of pokes his head out and he can see the pale glow of the guard tower's brazier through the murk at the end of the alleyway. But then it is obscured by the silhouettes of 3 figures who slowly lumber into view. And they move strangely, kind of awkwardly. And Gideon at first thinks they must be really drunk. But he's in no mood to be taking on any number of rough sorts, sober, let alone 3 sheets to the wind. But they must know he's down here. There's nowhere to run. The alley is a dead end. He is going to have to talk his way out of this. He draws his pistol and his dagger, and he holds them behind his back out of sight. He steps out of the shadows and says, "Look, I don't know what you've heard, but I can assure you that whatever it was, I had nothing to do with it. So let's stop skulking about in the dark, head back to the tavern, share a drink, and say no harm done." But there's no response. Well, no verbal response anyway. And the figures inch forward as one. And Gideon can smell death. He grips the handle of his pistol, his finger ready on the trigger. And the sun once again peeks out from behind a break in the mist, and its warm glow briefly floods the alleyway. And it gives just enough light for Gideon to get a good look at his assailants' faces. And it is a sight he will never forget. Each of the 3 figures approaching him have the deathly white pallor and sodden appearance of drowned men. And Gideon knows this look all too well. But these aren't drowned men. Dead men don't walk. But this cognitive dissonance isn't the most disturbing thing. The most disturbing thing is their eyes, or rather their lack of eyes, because where each man's eyes should be, there is nothing. And I don't mean an empty eye socket, I mean literally nothing. A black abyssal void in place of any humanity there once was. And these things get closer. They come shambling forward, their twisted hands grasping for Gideon, their jaws slack. Gideon must do something. And I think this is going to be a move. We could get into a structured fight here, but I'm conscious of getting bogged down and also of time. And I think that there is another way to do this, and that is with the move battle, which says when you fight a battle and it happens in a blur, envision your objective and roll. And then it gives us a whole bunch of options with which to resolve this. So of all these options, I think all we can do against these slow moving things is to try and use our speed and the environment to our advantage. I don't think any of the other options are going to work here. So the objective is to either defeat them or get away. And I think it has to be defeat them. Like, he's got nowhere to go, right? He has to fight them to the bitter end, which is obviously not Gideon's forte. But it is what it is. We have to do this. So let's battle these wet freaks. Rolling plus edge. That is a weak hit. On a weak hit, you achieve your objective, but not without cost. Pay the price. Okay, so we do wriggle our way out of this. But before we envision the whole thing, I think I'm going to fold something into this resolution because it was a weak hit. So we need to make it more interesting. We need to add a layer of complication. And I'm going to do that by bringing the vigilante into this, right? We rolled up that a vigilante was taking matters into their own hands. Well, let's see that happen. But first, I think we need to define them. We need to define this vigilante and see how they get involved. So let's first roll up some pronouns. 78 is they, them, and a first look. 36 is flashy. That's interesting. Okay, and their disposition is 75 desperate. Okay, so we also want to give them a cool look. So there is a trademark accessory oracle. Let's hit that. 87 is shark hide cuirass. I don't know what that is. Ah, okay, it's armor. Here's a picture I just found. So it covers your torso, front and back. But this one is made from shark hide. I think that's a pretty good look. And looking at the oracle, I'll pick another thing that just kind of makes sense if we're going to lean into the masked vigilante trope. 34 is face concealing veil or bandana, and I'll come up with something more interesting than just a bandana. Don't worry. Now, a vigilante needs a weapon. And luckily there is a trademark weapon oracle for us to roll on, so let's do that. 63 is a pair of matching hatchets. Well, if this didn't just become the coolest vigilante in the Sundered Isles in the space of a few dice rolls, a flashy, masked, non-binary vigilante wearing shark skin armor, wielding a pair of hatchets. You love to see it. So, all right, let's just envision the battle first and then see how the vigilante gets involved. So the first of these things comes in. Its arms are groping for Gideon and he manages to kind of sway out of the way. But he doesn't have much time to react as the next one comes lumbering towards him, hands clawing. He's only got one shot in his pistol and he doesn't want to waste it. So he brings the dagger round and he slashes it across the chest and he feels the blade tear a ragged gash through the clothing, but he also feels it glance kind of ineffectively off this thick, hard, almost rubbery skin. So Gideon drops to the floor and kind of evades its grasp, and he wriggles between its legs and rolls to his feet, and then he finds himself standing face to face with the third of these wretched beasts. And this one seems bloated. It seems more ungainly than the others. And it's also the only thing standing between him and the end of the alleyway. He can outrun them if he gets back on the dock and gets back to the safety of the tavern. And he senses that this is his only chance. He levels his pistol. This is the last chance to see if this thing understands that it needs to back down. But it doesn't. Whatever remains of its humanity has gone. It's just a drowned shell. The black voids in its face stare back with abyssal indifference. And it shuffles towards Gideon, searching him out. Gideon doesn't want to do it, but he aims and pulls the trigger. And when I say aim, like Gideon closes his eyes. That's funny to me. The hammer comes down, and there is this plume of smoke, followed by the crack of a shot being fired. And Gideon's aim is true. It hits this thing. And unlike the dagger, it does damage. The shot slams into the thing's chest with a deep thud. And after a second, black, cloudy water starts to bubble out of the small hole. But this thing keeps coming, much to Gideon's horror. But with every step, it seems to slow. Black water escapes from the hole quicker and quicker, starting to gush out. And it gets weaker, slower, smaller. And that's when Gideon realizes that as this foul-smelling water leaks out, this thing is losing its form. Its legs give way first, and it collapses to the floor, arms still dragging it towards Gideon, but the mass of its body is rapidly disappearing as it desperately flails its last groping hand towards Gideon, and it finally loses all solidity and becomes a dank, black puddle and a bundle of ragged clothes. And this is a horrifying thing to witness, and Gideon is deeply perturbed by what he has just participated in. So we will represent that by paying the price in the form of a suffer move and a hit to our spirit, because, not going to lie, that was pretty fucking dispiriting. So we'll bump our spirit down to 4. And it doesn't really feel right to do the second part of the endure stress move and try and resist it, because I think Gideon is genuinely quite terrified. And I don't think he's going to try and be heroic here. But it's also not over, because like Gideon has been watching that happen, like seeing that bloated, drowned flesh golem dissolve. And as he's been doing that, one of the others has grabbed him from behind, like one hefty arm clamped around his neck, and it hauls him off his feet, spinning him round back towards the dark of the alley. And now he's facing the other one, who is coming in, and Gideon instinctively like kicks out with his feet and kind of pushes the other one away, whilst the one that's holding him kind of stumbles back out onto the dock. The thing he pushed away with his legs slams into the wall of the alley, and as it attempts to come forward, we can see it is caught on something. Its clothes perhaps snagged on a length of drain pipe, and it's struggling to get free. And all this time, Gideon is being manhandled by one of these monsters. But he's still got his pistol and his dagger, and Lorenzo is scampering around, waving his hands, gesturing towards Gideon's pistol. And Gideon lets go, and the pistol clatters into the dock. Lorenzo picks it up and starts screeching for ammo, and Gideon is like, seriously, buddy, I'm a little busy here. And he's trying to loosen the pouch on his belt so Lorenzo can get the shot and powder to reload, but he can't quite do it, because like he's being ragged around violently by a wet oaf, and he's being dragged once again into the dark of the alleyway. So Lorenzo takes matters into his own hands and scurries up the leg of this thing and onto Gideon and pulls loose the ammo pouch from his belt and sets to work reloading the pistol. Like, what do these monstrosities want? Do they want to tear him apart? Do they want to drown him? Do they want to take him somewhere, or something worse? All of these options flash through Gideon's mind, and he doesn't really want to know the answer to any of these questions. The one that's caught on a drain pipe finally pulls itself loose, but as it does, it wrenches the drain pipe off the wall with it and brings this length of heavy lead guttering swinging down at incredible speed. And Gideon sees it coming and kicks his feet out again, pushing this oncoming ghoul into the way of this pipe, and it smashes into its back with this hollow thud and sends it sprawling to the ground. And in the chaos, he repeatedly jabs his dagger into the leg of the thing holding him, and after 3 or 4 attempts, he finally feels the tip break through the thick, blubbery skin, and his hand engulfed in a jet of icy black water spurting out of the wound. And he is dropped immediately, and the thing that was holding him falls to the ground, joining the other. And as Gideon attempts to crawl away, it grabs his ankle. Lorenzo has nearly finished loading, but the other monster that was knocked down by the pipe is now getting to its feet, and it's staggering, punch-drunk towards Gideon. And Gideon reaches out, and Lorenzo hands him the pistol. It's now locked and loaded. He swings it round and pulls the trigger. At point-blank range, the thing holding him by the legs doesn't stand a chance. Its head explodes in a shower of black water, and the rest of it almost instantaneously disappears, leaving only torn rags behind. But there is still one more, and as Gideon scrambles to his feet, he has only one thought: run. But he doesn't even make it a pace or two towards the dock as something metal whistles past his ear. He looks back and sees a hatchet, ivory handled, embedded in the final ghoul's chest. It stumbles forward, slowed but still moving. Gideon looks to the dock, the direction from which the hatchet came, and sees a figure who moves with an elaborate flourish, launching another hatchet dramatically past Gideon once again, hitting its target clean between the black voids where its eyes used to be. Water spurts out of the chasm cleaved into its skull, and it splashes down to nothing onto the alleyway floor. The figure on the dock moves cautiously forwards. The thick mist has dissipated somewhat, as if dispatching these things has lifted it. The sun is trying its best to break through. It's by no means bright, but Gideon can now clearly make out his saviour. But it doesn't particularly set his mind at ease. They wear a mask, the likes of which Gideon has never seen. It is bright white, with an upturned mouth. As they step closer, Gideon can see gills. The mask is in fact the underside of a stingray, folded around this person's face, covering their mouth and nose. The pearly white of this cartilaginous fish is a stark contrast to their light brown skin. A hood covers their head, but Gideon can tell this person is young, maybe early 20s if he had to guess. They wear an unusual piece of armour in the form of a rough, bluish-grey sharkskin cuirass that covers their torso, and it has these darker grey tiger stripes running up its side. Their pale green eyes meet Gideon's. He is perturbed to see the gills of the ray mask moving as the wearer breathes. Who the hell is this? They speak, and their mask alters their voice in a very strange way.
You're the bounty hunter who seeks the mechanical woman.
Gideon grips his pistol tightly and says, "Something like that?"
Your pursuit has brought you to a cursed place, my friend.
Gideon says, "I'm starting to get that impression." And Gideon is starting to think that maybe this person is another bounty hunter. Perhaps he's on their turf. And to kind of dissipate that tension, he says, "I don't want any trouble."
If she went into the warren, your quarry is dead. Or worse.
Gideon gives a skeptical look.
You don't know what's going on here, do you?
I must have missed the announcement.
Fool's Rest has never been a place in which you wish to linger, but of late the situation has worsened. Here you can usually find a buyer for anything. However, something ancient, powerful was recently brought in for sale. A sunken relic. There were no buyers, but Fool's Rest paid a heavy price.
Gideon, not really wanting to drag this out longer, says, "Sounds unfortunate."
Oh, I'm afraid it's much worse than that. Someone seized it and has awoken a dreadful power. A power that turns men into abyssal beasts. Beasts that blindly seek the relic to reclaim it. The one who holds the relic has retreated into the warren.
Gideon says, "Like I said, sounds unfortunate."
Whilst that relic remains under their control, there's no escaping Fool's Rest. The only way out belongs to them.
Gideon says, "Let me guess. This relic. You're the hero out to destroy it." And the vigilante laughs.
Oh, no, no, no. I'm going to steal it. And you're going to help me.
Thank you a million times. Thank you for watching. Please like this video, subscribe if you've not done so already, and click the little bell icon so you can be notified as soon as the next video drops. I'll be back next time, but until then, it is farewell and safe passage.